Welcome back to DAGryffyn Hobby. My name's Dave. It's about time I start thinking about a control panel. Well, it's not really much of a control panel considering there's really not much to control. I don't have switches and whatnot, but I do want to have meters on each of the main 4 lines, as well as some additional breakers for other circuits, and maybe an emergency shutoff or 2, depending how I think about wiring it. I'm just at the beginning stages. I have to rebuild both my ZWs that I'm going to be using. I have to construct the panel. I have to do a bunch of wiring, but let's just jump in and see what I've got so far. Where to start? Well, let's go back a bit and mention this here. There's a little voltmeter that was given to me by one of my buddies, and it got me thinking about how I wanted to build a control board, what information I wanted to see, and that sort of thing. So I did not end up using this one solely because I needed to be able to get a bunch of them that were all the same so that it would look good. I didn't want to have different types of meters on there. So this I'll use for another project. So what I'll be using are these 2 meters that I picked up off of Amazon. I just wanted to go for something that was easy to get in case I needed more replacements. One's a voltmeter, one's an ammeter, and I've got enough to do the 4 channels that I need for the 4 main loops. Off of Amazon, I also picked up these 5-amp breakers. Now, these will trip if you derail and a train bridges the 2 rails, but they don't trip quick enough to protect electronics. These really are solely for protecting the wiring and the transformers. They definitely trip quicker than the ones in the transformers, but as I continue to use some of the newer equipment, I will have to add something in here that will be a correcting breaker. But for the time being, these will work just fine. So how am I going to build this? Well, I'm still working on that. This is my current mock-up of what it might look like. I think I've decided since to go the other direction and have them next to each other. It will depend. I'm going to mock it up a couple different ways and see what I like. But essentially what I have is the common and the center rail coming in from the transformer. I've got a breaker, I've got an LED, I've got the 2 meters, and then I've got the wires out to the track. This isn't particularly complicated, but it did take my brain a minute or 2 to figure out the wiring. So let's take a look at that. Now we're looking at the back, so the positive's on this side, the common's on this side. Common comes in, goes to the back of the voltmeter, and then up to the track. The center rail, the hot, if you will, comes up to the breaker. From the breaker to the voltmeter, from the voltmeter to the ammeter, and then from there out to the track. I did mention an LED, and the way I wired this one in is power from the breaker to the common on the back of the meter. And the reason I did it this way is because I want to see easily that the breaker is tripped. Like, this is a green LED. The green LED will be off if the breaker trips. I figured that was the easiest, quickest way to get some sort of visual representation of the status. The orientation of the gauges is probably going to change. I ordered a utility cart that I can turn into a control center. Got 2 ZWs and then probably some additional transformers for any other power that I want to run, maybe a DC transformer. I don't know. There are options and there are different things I want. So I wanted something big enough to hold the 2 transformers up top and then still have place to put any auxiliary power. But also it's got a good set of sturdy wheels on it because I want to be able to roll it out of the way. I want to be able to roll it under the layout, and I've toyed with the idea of having it able to connect in different spots, like 2 or 3 different spots around the layout so that I can move it if I want to. Now, there is one other item I picked up today to add to this, and that would be this great big red button. Because everything needs a panic button, right? I looked for something that would be applicable for some high draw power tools, and this is what I came up with. I was looking at pictures of control panels in diesel locomotives, and I was like, my control panel needs some big red buttons. So that was the main idea here, but also I was thinking of a panic situation where something's going on and I need to be able to cut the power real quick. So I'm either going to wire this for all the power or get a second one and wire one to each ZW. So that way I can easily stop either ZW or hit them both and stop both. I mean, I do have a power switch in the room that will cut all power to the layout, but that's on the other side of the room from where my control panel is, and it's under the layout. So I can get to it, but I would probably trip over something and break my neck on the way there. I'm thinking I'm going to mount 2 of these just so that I can really quickly kill the power to either of the 2 transformers. Might be overkill, but I thought it'd be fun. Who doesn't like big red buttons, you know? These are nice. You push it down and it cuts the power, and then you turn it and it pops back up and you're good to go. That's the plan as it stands at the moment. I figured I would start with this foam board here just to make it easier to figure out where I wanted to place things. And it's worked pretty well so far. I don't know yet what I'll build the panel out of, possibly some sheet metal. Oh, that came off. Actually, that makes me think of something. I had initially started to wire it with these types of connectors. I'm going to change that to loops so that they won't pull off. Just a little more secure, a little less to worry about. I had mentioned that I have this green LED that will be lit all the time unless the breaker pops. With these switches, you've got a normally open and a normally closed. So if I'm thinking about this right, on one side I can wire the power through to the layout so that it has power. On the other side I could route power for a warning light so that when it's engaged it would set, you know, like a red light on somewhere. I don't know, it probably isn't necessary, but it might be a fun little addition. So we'll see what happens with that. The cart that I purchased is 30 inches wide, and this board is 30 inches wide, so I thought it might fit well to cover the entire front of that, and then either lift up so that I can get behind it, or lift off so I can get to the wires behind it. Or, I mean, the whole cart will pull out, so we'll see. But instead of having them stacked, I might put them next to each other. I kind of think that looks better than top and bottom, especially if I've got 8 of them across the front of the panel. And then I can put, you know, the breaker and the LED up there. As I said, I was also considering additional breakers for a number of auxiliary lines, whether it's a trolley line or accessories or something like that. It would be, I've got the breakers, you know, it would be neat to have them in case something shorts out, it doesn't overheat or take out my whole layout. So maybe I'll have like a row of them right here. We'll see how it works out. It's really all very up in the air right now. I'm kind of waiting to get the cart to put that together to mount the ZWs on so that I have a real feel for how it's going to feel to operate from that. And then I'll revisit the specific shape of the panel, which again won't be made out of the foam when it comes down to it, but probably metal or something, like sheet metal or something. But still in the design stage, it's real easy to change what I'm doing with this foam, so I've really enjoyed working with it so far. And I've been kind of sketching out where everything's going to go. Everything's got to have a ground, and then the power has to come up for each individual set of gauges. In my head at the moment, it seems a little overwhelming, but really it's very basic, and I think it'll be fine once I get moving. When hooking these up, the common comes up, attaches to the back of the voltmeter, and then out to the track. The power side comes up to the breaker, out from the breaker to the back of the voltmeter, then from the back of the voltmeter to the back of the ammeter, and then from there out to the center rail. Now, I am no electrical genius, far from it, so if I'm doing this wrong, feel free to chime in. I did test it, it does work. So if I did it wrong, at least I didn't do it very wrong. And there might be a better way to wire in this LED, but I'll play with a couple different methods and see what happens. And the LED is just a basic Amazon LED that's green, comes with the resistors to wire in there. So that's all there is to that. I had this hooked up for a little bit and I was running some trains and then tripping the breakers and stuff like that to see how well everything worked. If something shorts, if a car derails and bridges both rails, this needle will jump from 2 to 4 amps all the way up to 10. So that's a good visual indication that you've got a short. That happens a lot quicker than the breaker tripping. Power will be coming from 2 ZWs. I have 5 donor units. All of them need something, at very least a cable, at most rollers, cables, wires, breakers. So it will be a little bit of work. Since I have a few of them, I figured I'd take one completely apart to better familiarize myself with what it's like inside one of these transformers. This is the bottom of the case with most of the stuff removed. I wasn't in the mood to start desoldering everything, but I wanted to get it apart enough to really have an idea of what I was looking at and to make sure I understood how it came apart. There we have some of the random parts. In typical Dave fashion, I took this apart a while ago. I don't really remember where everything went. So luckily I have a couple more because I don't know if this one's going back together. If you have one of these ZWs and it makes a buzzing noise all the time, from what I understand, it's here in the coil that's the problem. When you can see that these move and they come apart. So when it's plugged in, they vibrate and they end up bouncing against each other and making noise. It's not a problem for performance, it's just kind of an unpleasant side effect of the fact that these weren't laminated together as well as they could have been. So I've got a lot to work on. I've got to rebuild the ZWs and I got to build the control panel. When the cart gets here, I think that will be the first step. I'll put the cart together, I'll place a couple of ZWs on it, see how they fit, and really just get a feel for what it looks like. And then I'm going to share my time between building the panel for the gauges and rebuilding the ZWs so that I have transformers to use. I got my work cut out for me. Let's look at the wiring nice and basic. You've got the minus, which is the common rail, the plus, which will be the center rail. We want to protect the circuit, so we'll put in this breaker. So that's the center rail, or positive, in and then out. You could probably do whichever meter you want in whatever order, but the way I'm going to do this is, place down the voltmeter. The common will come up and to the side of the meter, and then from there to the outer rails on the track. Positive will come from the breaker and to the positive on the back of this meter, and then from there to one side of the ammeter, and then from the other side out to the center rail. And unless I'm having some sort of senior moment or something, that's the way it's going to be. The only addition really is that LED, which can be attached to ground anywhere, and then to the plus coming out of the breaker. So that's the way I'm going to set it up. If I do put in the big breaker, the big emergency stop button, that's going to be way before this, possibly between power strip and the transformer, but I'll worry about those specifics later. My brain apparently is having enough trouble with basic low voltage wiring at the moment. So this is the plan. If you have any suggestions, recommendations, warnings, throw them in the comments. Let me know, let everybody else who's watching the video know, so that none of us burn our garage down. I am not an electrician, so I bear no responsibility for burned down train rooms. Use at your own risk. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time on DAGryffyn Hobby.